on this episode of the Clip Service podcast. It is my displeasure to inform everyone that doesn't know that this is the first episode of the Clippers offseason, as the Clippers were swiftly bounced. Actually, not swiftly. Clippers got bounced in a Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets in what was a very closely contested series outside of Game 3 and Game 7. And the Clippers season is effectively over. We've had Rola and I were going to do an episode earlier, but we needed a little bit of time to, compartmentalize and try and just look at the big picture of the season as a whole. And so we're here to do that, and we're going to break down the entire season, the playoff series, the future of this Clippers team, what's on the horizon. The draft is coming up. The draft order is set. We're going to talk a lot about that. There's one team in Texas that we're going to talk a little bit about in regards to that. And then kind of what's going on around the league, the state of the playoffs, and all of that. So it's going to be a jam-packed episode, guys. It's been a little while since we talked last, so we want to make sure we cover all the bases. So without further ado, let's make it happen.
What's up, Clipper Nation? And welcome to the Clip Service Podcast. Please make sure to find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Amazon Music, and YouTube. And you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Clip Service Pod. This is your boy Rola and Nick coming from different locations.
Yes, Rola and I were both in the middle of a move. We're getting situated in our new environments. As you can tell, I'm sitting in a big armchair because it's all I have right now. No overhead lighting for those of you that are watching on YouTube. So we're doing the best we can, guys, but we wanted to bring you, the Clipper content. There is a lot to talk about. So as Rola said, let's get right into it. The Clippers... this was probably about, a week and a half ago? How long has it been? I feel like time kind of just doesn't make sense. The Clippers are out of the playoffs. But basically, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Was it really that long ago? Anyway, the Clippers got bounced in Game 7. Okay. The Clippers got bounced by the Denver Nuggets in Game 7. I came to you guys on a solo pod right before Game 6, which the Clippers won. That game, I mean, in the grand, I can give you guys a little bit of a synopsis for that one. It was a great game. James Harden, it was the last time of the season that James Harden really kind of put the team on his back. James Harden finished the game with 28 points. Solid contributions from Kawhi, and great game from Norm. Hit some big shots down the stretch. 24 from Norm, 27 from Kawhi, 28 from James. Only played an 8-man rotation. Big plays from Nico, Derek, and Bogdan, who were the only guys to come off the bench and play in this game. That game was fun in front of the home crowd. Obviously, it was an elimination game. It had me very hopeful going into Game 7 that the Clippers could try and move on to the second round. And obviously, I was a little bit worried about going into Denver, especially with how hard fought the series was up to that point. And unfortunately, the Clippers go into Denver and do the exact opposite. The Clippers looked really, really bad in Game 7, basically from the jump. Ivica Zubac led the team with 27 points. James Harden was about as opposite as he could have possibly gone from what we saw in that Game 6. 11 points from James, only 9 shot attempts. Kawhi was getting doubled all game long, tripled at times. 20 points for the game for him, 8 for 15. So not a horrible game in the grand scheme of things, but we needed obviously more from him if we wanted to escape that that series. 15 points from Chris Dunn, which was nice. 12 from Norm, 5 for 12. Bogdan was good off the bench, 5 for 11, 18 points. Some of that was in garbage time. This game was. I'll get your opinion of the game real quick, Rola, but I just wanted to say that I would have been okay losing this game if it was a hard fought game and it ended kind of the way that it ended, game 4 ended, where it was like it came down to the last possession, because the Nuggets are very good, right? They're giving OKC, a run for their money right now. They're down 2-3, but it's been a very close series and Jokic looks great. But it was the way that the Clippers just didn't look like it was a game 7. It looked like, oh, we're going to have another shot after this one if we lose. But this truly was the season for the Clippers, and they did not play like it. What was your immediate thoughts? I've already heard some of them, but tell these fine listeners what you thought of game 7.
Well, first of all, to kind of go back to your comment about being hopeful after game 6, I was the opposite. I think we ended the game horrifically. There were a lot of turnovers. I don't know if you remember, but I don't remember how much we were up by in the fourth quarter, but we had pretty much lost the lead. And the end of game 6 was closer than it might seem to, I guess, the naked eye. And then going into this game 7 basically was a continuation of that end of game 6. And we basically got torched. We didn't want it. No one on our team wanted it. James Harden, they say he collapses in the playoffs, and we saw it firsthand. Similar thing happened last season with Paul George, but we blamed it on Paul George.
Because it was Paul George. It was on Paul George. It wasn't just him, but
yeah, no, I'm just saying that as a superstar, as the second superstar on the team, you can't be absolved of any blame. So I'm going to blame James Harden for last season. I'm going to also blame him for this game. This is a game 7. He's probably, outside of Kawhi, the most tenured player on this team, and to not even be prepared to drop 7 points and only take 8 shots in a game 7 is pretty shocking to me. I don't really have anything to say about this. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I pretty much
let it out.
I pretty much had the same thoughts for 2 seasons now. And I feel like I feel like a broken record, kind of saying the same thing over and over again. And it seems like we're going to do the same thing next year, and we're going to be in the same position next year. And to be honest, I'm fucking tired. Like I'm over this. I'm over raging about this. They don't want to change anything. They're only, I love Steve Ballmer, but it seems like he's only interested in making as much money as possible right now. Because if you look at this team and you look at the results of the last 2-3 years, we haven't had anything to show for it. I mean, we all asked for a season where Kawhi is healthy. We got one, and we got the same result. We lost in 7 games against the Denver Nuggets, a team that we wanted to fucking play. We could have lost to the Warriors and played against the Rockets, but we wanted to play the Nuggets. Here we are. Everyone needed to step up, and they didn't in 7 games. We were obviously the better team. We have the better players, and at the end of the day, our stars didn't step up, didn't motivate the team, didn't make sure everyone was ready for a game 7, and no one was fucking ready. Not even James Harden wasn't even fucking ready. How is that possible? The dude, I don't want him on my team if this is going to be the result. Congratulations. He played well in the regular season. Congratulations. You got a fucking all-star selection. But when it matters most, you're a fucking first-round exit, and that's not someone I want on my fucking team. And that's
It's so funny because there's an echo. There's an echo. Like you're very clearly in an empty room right now, and there's an echo. And so that little rant with the echo just made it that much more powerful. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think that there's I'm choosing to look at it with a little bit more nuance, but I'm at the point where I think that every single reaction, because there's so many, there's so much to break down over the last 5 years of this 2-1-3 era or the the Kawhi era, that there's so many different moving parts and so many things to consider that I'm at peace with whatever way Clipper fans, because anybody that's still a part of the Clipper fandom is a true fan at this point, because there's been so much heartbreak. I mean, you could have been a fan 2 years ago, and you could have been a Clipper fan for the last 2 years, and you've still gone through more than a lot of organizations go through in terms of struggle and strife and heartbreak. So I'm at the point where I think everybody that calls themselves a Clipper fan and that cares about this team is entitled to believe and feel however they want to feel about this team, because there's really no explanation to much of what's happened and what's transpired over the last 5 years. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to not want to bring back James Harden, especially if if we're gonna see this again, right, in the playoffs. I choose to look at it more. I mean, I give Harden not the lion's share of the blame, but I give him a lion's share of the blame in this playoff series. My only thing holding me back from that is we are not in this position at all without James Harden, and I think it's important to look at the series or the season as a whole. And James Harden was fantastic, nothing short of fantastic this whole regular season, and I think that that's important. But more to your point, Rola, like when push comes to shove, it's the guys that get paid the most money. It's the guys that are expected to be the stars and the focal points of this team to step up. I think it's James Harden and it's Kawhi. With Kawhi, I'm trying to look at the series as a whole. Kawhi could have been better. Obviously, I think if he was a little bit better, we probably would have won the series. But the way that I'm choosing to look at the Kawhi situation is, he had that 39-point game in game 2. I think it was game 2.
Sick.
What's that?
I said sick.
Yeah, but I think that it's important to look at Kawhi. Like, the dude obviously doesn't have the same explosion. I mean, he would show it at times, but he's not overall as athletic of a player as he was 4 years ago, right? We can't expect that of him. And so, like, a lot of Kawhi's game is individual will and getting to your kill spots and stuff like that. But the problem is, if you don't have as much athleticism and you're getting tripled and doubled, then it's up to the other guys, i.e. James Harden, Norman Powell, Ivica Zubac, to take a little bit of that pressure off of Kawhi so he has more room to cook. And I think that, I guess my overall synopsis of this series is that while our stars, particularly James Harden, didn't do enough, I think what this series boils down to, quite literally, was that the guys around each team's respective stars, the Nuggets guys were better. I mean, you look, I am pretty confident in saying Aaron Gordon was the best player in that entire series. Better than Jokic, better than Murray, better than Kawhi, and better than James Harden. Like, they literally don't win that game 4 without Aaron Gordon. If they do not win that game 4, the Clippers go up 3-1 and they win that series. Mm-hmm. And then, you look at in game 7, he was great. And, he was damn near perfect in every single game. And then you have Christian Brown hit a huge shot in game 1, was playing incredible defense, was out rebounding Zoo in game 4? Oh, no. Yeah, maybe game 4. There was one game where Zoo had 1 rebound at the third quarter, and Christian Brown was dominating the glass. Then you look at Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook shot a higher percentage from 3 than Steph Curry did in that first round. You look at him now in the second round. What?
They were wide open shots.
Sure, but he's getting those same looks against the OKC Thunder, and guess what he's shooting right now? He's shooting 23% from 3. Or him and Porter Jr. together are shooting 23% from 3, something like that. Basically, Russ came to play, and there was something personal there with Russ. Like, he played an incredible series. Like, their role players, Michael Porter was great, in his minutes. Like, their role players outplayed our role players, and then I'm not saying role players as in like bench guys. I'm saying guys around the stars. I would even consider James Harden, not a role player in this series, but the guys around their star. And Aaron Gordon outplayed James Harden. Like the guys around the best player on either respective team outplayed their guys, outplayed ours. And that was a huge factor in this series. Norman Powell had some big moments, but Norman Powell really was not the same since his injury. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Norman Powell as it relates to Lawrence Frank had a presser a couple of days after the Clippers got eliminated, and there's some stuff to touch on there, especially in terms of Norman Powell and James Harden. But yeah, we just needed more. We just needed more from everybody. But I think that, you know, when it relates, going back to Kawhi, when it relates to Kawhi, Kawhi just didn't get enough of a reprieve at times to where like he was always the Nuggets effectively took him out of the game. We did a really good job of taking Jokic out of certain games. Like that was the game plan, to take Jokic and Murray out of the games. But the problem was that their you know, outside guys beat ours, and it made it extremely hard to try and focus completely on Jokic and Murray. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Quick question, I guess, for you is, how would you, or what's your advice on how let's say in that series, how would you correct that? You notice that your bench or your role players aren't playing up to par, which I think they were. For us to be in a game 7, they have to have at least been playing somewhat up to par, because I mean we had the same record as the Nuggets. You know, this was a series, this was a 4-5 series, and both teams are, you know, considered on the same level. So the role players are, you know, about the same level, considering if you put, you know, Kawhi, James Harden, and Jamal Murray and Jokic on the same level, right? The role players are more or less on the same level, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, like in my opinion, I think it comes down to Kawhi and it comes down to Ty Lue. I don't think that the team was ready. And I think that is the coach's job, to make sure that the team is ready for a game 7. That's number one, the coach's job. Number 2, it's Kawhi's job as the leader, as the number one guy, as the guy who gets all the money, to make sure that everyone is ready and prepared to play in a game 7. As someone who has, I think he might be, is he the only one on our team with a championship?
No, Norman Powell, Patty
Oh,
Mills.
sorry, I always forget Norm. But, you know, Kawhi, you know, led a team to a championship. So Kawhi knows better than everyone what it takes, right? And for our role players to completely be dominated and have no idea what the fuck the moment is complete failure on Kawhi. Is a complete failure on Ty Lue, who is also a champion, who also knows what it takes to get there. So, like, in my opinion, I don't know why it feels like we're doing the same thing every single year. Like, I'm putting full blame on Kawhi. You know, one, I don't think he played a series that was superstar level. He had one game where he scored 39 points. Everyone applauded him for it, and he did play well. But I mean, that wasn't even the best game of the series. Jamal Murray had a game where I think it was like 42 or 40 something. Like,
well, he had 43 in Game 7. Oh wait, no, he had 43 in Game 5. Sorry,
Game 5. That win they had, he had 43 points. Like, that wasn't even the highest. That wasn't even the best, highest scoring game of the series. So when you think about it, it's like, what was Kawhi supposed to be? That number one guy. He's supposed to be on the same level as Jokic. And what was Kawhi doing? He wasn't on that level. He averaged, outside of that game, maybe like 20, 25 points, which is not something that we need in this first round of the playoffs. And you know, I think that we mentioned in that after Game 3 podcast that we needed more from Kawhi, and we did not get that for the rest of the series. You know, he played decent in this game, 6 of 13 from the field, but you know, that's not a Game 7 game from a superstar. James Harden obviously completely collapsed. I don't even, like, it almost disgusts me from a guy who's known for scoring in a Game 7 to score have a single digit game. That's quite literally insane to me. I don't understand how that's even possible. That's, in my opinion, either a physical collapse or a complete mental collapse. And if it's a physical collapse, I don't want him on my team at all. because I just don't understand how you could be in a game 7 and after a full season and not be in the shape to play out a full series. I have mentioned in the past that I am of the mindset that Kawhi Leonard should retire because I don't believe that he can play in multiple 7-game series. Had we won this series, I would have predicted that the next series would have gone 7 games against OKC. Which, with the Nuggets, it seems like it's headed that way. And I don't know if Kawhi would have been able to get to that, game 2, 39-point game level, which we would need from someone like him. So, I blame Ty Lue. I blame Kawhi. Obviously, I blame James Harden. Those are the top 3 for me. I don't want them on my team next season, but we shall see. I think.
Oh, we're gonna see Kawhi on the team next season. There's no question about that.
I mean, I have obviously no control. I just think that there's a pretty good chance we're in the same position next season, and then we kind of go from there. But I have no tears. I shed no fucking tears on that Saturday. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised. It is what it is. Like I said, at the end of Game 6, we played like shit. And going into Game 7, kind of seeing what I was seeing, it is what it is. I kind of, we did better than what I predicted to start the season. But this isn't a team that's going to win a championship. In my opinion, I don't think we have the personnel.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Also, I just wanted to give the disclaimer. I read off the stats earlier for what I thought was Game 7. It was Game 5, which makes it even worse because the second leading scorer for the second leading scorer, and I remember this now, the second leading scorer for the Clippers in Game 7 was Kobe Brown, who had 13 points in 8 minutes. So shouts out Kobe Brown, going 6 for 7 from the field, was a plus 13. 22 from Kawhi Leonard, 7 from James Harden, 9 from Norman Powell, 10 from Ivica Zubac. Derrick Jones started out the game strong with like 7 straight points, but was kind of a no-show late in the game. That's all fair. And I think that I'm choosing to look at it a little bit differently, but that doesn't make what you're saying untrue. And I think that there's no rhyme or reason as to why the Clippers weren't able to, obviously not win the series, but more importantly, to not show up and be prepared for Game 7 in an elimination game. You win or go home. Mm-hmm. And they just didn't show up. Kind of more to my point, though. You look at Game 7, and they were games like this throughout the series. But, Jokic and Murray, it was very clear the Clippers tried to take Jokic and Murray out of this game, and they held them both to 16 points. But you look at Aaron Gordon with 22, 9 for 16 from the field. You look at Christian Brown, 21 points, was 8 for 15 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3. Russell Westbrook, 16 points, 2 for 4, shot 50% from 3. Peyton Watson, 9 points, was perfect from the field in his 17 minutes. They're the guys, the guys that they needed to step up, stepped up, even when Jokic and Murray were unable to. 16 points from either of their stars is something that you would scoff at normally in a Game 7, but the thing is they got 50 points from their role players, and their role players were dominating ours throughout the series.
Can I ask you a quick question? Just a really quick question.
Sure.
Do you think that was part of the Denver Nuggets game plan?
Yes.
They knew that the Clippers were gonna try to take Jokic and Murray out and to kind of have Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown kind of take over the game?
I think it was part of the game plan, but I think it was part of the game plan, but it was also, you look at the guys that stepped up, aside from Russ. All of these guys are championship experience, have championship experience, so they know that when the moment comes, when they see that the opposing game plan is to take their stars out of the game, what they did was the role players seized the moment, they hit their open shots, they made the 50-50 plays, they out-hustled all of our guys, and it allowed them to win when Jokic and Murray combined for 32 points.
Yep.
Like you would expect that one of those guys to score that alone, but they didn't even need it, and they beat the Clippers by 19 points in a game 7. So,
Yep.
um,
I mean, like you said, Aaron Gordon had already at this point been the best player in the series, and then I don't know if you heard Christian Brown. They asked him how he was going to prepare for this game 7, and he kind of talked about how poorly he played in the game 7 last season and the playoffs against the Timberwolves. And he said, "I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to be ready." And, I wasn't surprised to see the way he played in this game 7. And I wasn't surprised to see the way Aaron Gordon played in this game 7. And then obviously Russell Westbrook with that chip on his shoulder, kind of wanting to get back at the Clippers. I mean, the motivation from those 3 players, I mean, we didn't have anyone with that level of motivation on our team. If we're being real, did anyone on our team really have a chip on their shoulder? Any reason to want to win this game 7? And that's kind of what irritated me was that it just didn't feel like anyone on our team wanted it as bad as the Nuggets, who won a championship 2 years ago. We have never won a championship, and it felt like they wanted it way more than us. And that's the shit that, like, it just pisses me off at the end of the day, which is why, like, I want a full change of, like, culture and a full change of personnel, because I feel like these players don't want it. Like, we've never won a championship, and they don't have that mentality of we've never won. They have won. We want to get to what they got. We want to get that. And they want it more. How is it possible that they want it more than us within 3 years, dude?
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy, dude.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly frustrating, and I think, and I'm not saying this with any sort of bias. I'm saying this just based on honest truth. This is what I saw. I really did see Kawhi compete for a good amount of that game 7, but again, going back to what I said, like, their game plan was the same as ours. Take the stars out of the game and let the role players beat you, and their role players beat ours significantly. And because, I mean, you saw it on defense. Like, Kawhi was competing on defense. We came out of the half, I think we were down by 11. We were down by 11 going into the half. Right. Kawhi comes out of the half, hits a 3 immediately, cuts the game to single digits. And from that, like, so Kawhi was invested in winning the game. I just didn't see it from anybody else. And I really can't put a whole lot of blame. Like, there are things that Ty Lue does that drive me crazy. I think that, like you've said it before, it takes him a little bit long to adjust to things, and that's frustrating. But I'm of the belief that I feel like he's always going to make the right adjustments at some point. But I think that there's only so much that a coach can do. I mean, you're telling adults to listen to you, right? So at the end of the day, these adults, multi-million dollars of their net worths combined, you have to convince these guys that all have egos. You have to have a level of ego to be an NBA player, to follow your game plan. And I'm sure that Ty Lue has done that. And it's just a matter of execution from the players. And, defensively too. Like, I'm not going to put this on Jeff Van Gundy. Like, his defensive schemes were great all season, but our defense wasn't great throughout this series, and that's on the players. And I wanted to jump into kind of like our next segment where we can kind of talk about each individual player. But I kind of wanted to go through like the rotational players from the season as a whole and kind of like break down what you thought. And let's start with the role players first, and then we'll get to Kawhi and we'll get to James. But I think this will be a good chance to kind of give your share of what you think the blame is, and who you kind of want to see next on the team. So let's just start with, obviously, I think, and people are talking about it. Law Murray talked about it in an interview. There are players that are probably not going to be back. I don't think Ben Simmons is going to be back unless it's a very, very low number. I would imagine that Amir Coffey is not coming back. He didn't play a single minute in the playoffs outside. Well, actually, I don't think he played a minute at all. I don't think he comes back. But I'm more so talking about, let's start with Chris Dunn, because I feel like he's had a very polarizing season. He's been a menace defensively, but my takeaway from him, especially in this series, was that the Clippers had a very hard time overcoming the fact that he wasn't punishing the Nuggets for leaving him wide open, and their guys were. Like Russ was. Like I would look at Russ and Chris Dunn in the same vein. Chris Dunn is a better defender, but they were being guarded the same. And like Chris Dunn, for the most part, really wasn't punishing the Nuggets for leaving him open, and it was allowing the Nuggets to shrink their defense. I don't know. What did you think about Chris Dunn's like individual performance?
I would also like to talk a little bit more about Ty Lue later, if we can squeeze that in.
Sure. We'll talk about him at the end as well.
Okay. To be completely honest, I feel like this segment is more for you, because for me, genuinely, I would throw a party. It would be a fucking fantastic day for me if we wiped the entire team clean outside of
Yeah.
Ivica Zubac.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like he's the only player that has wanted it over the past 2 years.
Sure.
Genuinely, and we saw it in the regular season, we saw it in the playoffs last season, and we saw it in the playoffs this season. That he genuinely wants it and genuinely wants to win. I don't see that want to win really from anyone else when it comes to the playoffs. I thought that in the regular season, Chris Dunn played really well. He was a really good on-ball defender. But like you said, everyone knew that he wasn't going to kill teams from the 3-point line, and in the playoffs,
I had hoped he would.
Yeah, I know, and in the Nuggets game plan, and probably would have been in the OKC game plan, was to leave him open and see if he can hit those threes, wide open threes. Keep in mind, he's a professional basketball player. He does this every single day, and he plays and he betters himself every single summer, yet somehow he can't hit an open 3-pointer. It truly blows my mind. Even Russell Westbrook somehow figured it out at some point.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
But, I just don't really, it doesn't click in my mind for someone who makes that much money, that does this every single day, and like you can't hit a wide open 3-pointer when it comes to your hand. It was, once they saw that he wasn't going to hit his threes, it was pretty much barbecue chicken from that point on. I mean, if one player in your starting lineup can't hit a shot, then one person on one of the other 4 people are going to be double teamed. And that ends up being Kawhi, and that ends up affecting Kawhi's numbers, affecting Kawhi's game. And then knowing James Harden is going to fucking collapse, it's an easy game plan, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I think you make a good point. I think this kind of is more because you've made it very clear. You've made it very clear, like what your desire is for this team. So I'm just going to go through this real quick, if you don't mind. Yeah. And then I want you to interject if you have any differing opinions. But I'm going to kind of omit Jordan Miller, Kobe Brown, and Cam Christie, because the plan for these guys was always to be more of a focal point probably next year or moving forward, And so I think that all of those guys had their moments. I'm really, really high on Cam Christie still. I think he's a hell of a player, and he's looked really good in the G League. Jordan Miller's had his moments. I would like to see more. Like Jordan Miller had his chances this season, but I would like to see more from him. Kobe Brown is very interesting because of his size and versatility, but again, I would like to see more from him. But I'm going to kind of omit those guys. Drew Eubanks, it kind of falls into that category of Clipper big men, backup big men that really just haven't been able to get it done. He was a great professional, but I would expect him to, I don't know what his contract's looking like, but I would not expect Drew Eubanks to be with the team next season. Patty Mills I'm a huge Patty Mills guy. He was great locker room guy this season. I mean, in his short time, I'm of the belief that as long as the Clippers aren't pressed roster wise, I would love to see Patty Mills back, just from a mentorship standpoint and just from an energy standpoint. He was basically supplanting PJ Tucker, and PJ Tucker was the exact opposite of what we saw from Patty Mills. So, I mean, I loved what I saw from Patty Mills. Can't really say much else about him. Ben Simmons, as I said earlier, I don't expect Ben Simmons to be back. Unless it's he re-signs for a very, very small number. I'm still intrigued with the idea of Ben Simmons on this team, but again, we needed more offense from him very clearly. Uh, Amir Coffey. Amir Coffey's a tough one because he's that homegrown talent. He was kind of brought in with Terrence Mann, um, but he was abysmal defensively throughout the season, and I think that he's still a very good player. I just think that there's probably a better opportunity for him with another team, unfortunately. Bogdan Bogdanovic, he started out slow with the Clippers, looked great the last like 10 games for the Clippers. I wouldn't mind seeing him back. And that kind of brings me to his counterpart, which would be Norman Powell.
Really
Norman,
quick, I wouldn't mind seeing Bogdanovic back also. I did feel like he started to play well towards the end of that series, and really kind of make his mark. I like that energy of him like
he's a
talking
competitor.
to Westbrook, and I felt like at times that kind of got the team going, and he was kind of an energy bunny that we brought in to kind of bring in, I guess, more energy and bring in a better play. Although I don't think that him for Terrence Mann was the best move. Just because I think that in a game like this, in a game 7 like this, I think that someone like Terrence Mann could have really helped, especially with that energy he brings and that defensive pedigree that he brings.
Yeah.
I think he could have helped on like Christian Brown or Jamal Murray in game 5. But I'm not the GM, and I guess we're all in Cancun at the end of the day.
I mean, that's very fair. I agree, with what you said. I wouldn't mind seeing Bogdan back. I think that there's a lot of question marks going into what this roster will be next season, but in turn, just as a whole, Bogdan proved enough to me to want to see him back on the team.
Yeah.
And he, he's a professional. He was never hung his head really. He looked frustrated at times when he first came to the Clippers, but he found a way to turn it around. And when he's going, he's a great offensive weapon. Mm-hmm. But his counterpart, in essence, is Norman Powell, because they kind of do the same thing. When Norman Powell was brought into the starting lineup, there was kind of that void on the bench where we needed that burst of energy in terms of scoring. Norman Powell's a little bit interesting because, and Lawrence Frank touched upon it in his presser, but Norman Powell is due for an extension this offseason, and it's going to sound a little bit harsh, but I would be pretty upset if the Clippers offered him an extension that was anything that would hamstring them financially. I love Norm. He's been an awesome Clipper. He led the whole addition by subtraction thing, which came to fruition ×2 this season. He looked great. He's a huge reason why the Clippers were in the position to play the Denver Nuggets as the 5th seed. Could have been the 4th seed if without the tiebreakers and stuff like that. He was incredible. He's such a great scorer, but I think with Norm, sometimes he gets in his own way with the whole I got to prove it. Like I want to be an all-star. I want to be, this or that, and sometimes he tries to do too much. He's not a great defender. I mean, his assignment, I don't know why he was on the floor at this time, but his assignment was to box out Aaron Gordon at the end of game 4, with 1 second left on the clock. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. I think that it would be in the Clippers' best interest to try and see if they could trade Norman Powell. I was of the belief, and I wasn't very loud with it, but I was of the belief at the trade deadline this year that Norman Powell's value was still so high that the Clippers should have seized the opportunity and traded him at that point. His value's gone down since then, but I think that he's still a tradable asset. That's where I stand with Norm. I wouldn't hate to see him back, but I think that there is an opportunity there to trade him to a team. I mean, there are a lot of teams that could use Norman Powell. And if we can get draft capital or a young player in return, I think that that's fine. Nico Batum, it might sound delusional, but I want Nico Batum to stay with the Clippers until the day that he chooses to retire. Nico Batum had his moments where he was missing shots in this series, but overall, I mean, the dude competes. He's switchable defensively and offensively. He he's so versatile and he's such a competitor and he's such a huge part of the Clippers history up to this point that and he's not going to command a huge contract in the future. I want to see Nico Batum on this team until he chooses to hang up that jersey. So that's my opinion on Nico Batum. Chris Dunn, basically everything you said is on the nose. Chris Dunn is such a good defender that from that aspect alone, I think he's worth hanging on to. But he was a real detriment for the Clippers, and I think that that's something that he really needs to work on this offseason. I would like to see him come off the bench possibly next year if the Clippers choose to keep him. But yeah, I mean, him and Derek Jones were like, our defensive points, our point of attack defenders. They were great. And that brings me to Derek Jones. I would love to see Derek Jones on this team next year. I think he was pretty phenomenal throughout the regular season. He also was missing shots in this series, but I think that he's still young enough to where he can be a part of this Clippers formula moving forward. I think he's only 27 or 28. Completely outplayed his contract. He shot a career high from 3 this year. I would love to see Derek Jones back. And then that really brings us, as long as I'm not leaving anybody out, that brings us to the big three, as it were, for the Clippers. And we'll start with Ivica Zubac. I've never wanted a Clipper back going into a summer. And obviously he's still under contract, so we don't have to worry about that. But to me, Ivica Zubac is as close to untouchable as you can get without being ridiculous. I mean, obviously there's always a price, but Ivica Zubac and Zach Lowe said it, a couple weeks ago on his podcast. Like, Ivica Zubac is one of the best growth development stories in recent NBA history. I mean, he's been awesome. He had his down moments this series, but Ivica Zubac overall, it's been such a joy to watch him this season that he's a part of this team moving forward. James Harden is due for a player option. He has a player option that he can opt into. I would imagine that he opts out of it. It's tough, man, because like James Harden was such a huge part of the regular season formula for this Clippers and turning the season around. But I wouldn't be broken if the Clippers ended up trading him for something this offseason. If they decide to run it back, I'm okay with that too. I know, Rola, you're not kind of that belief, but that's kind of my opinion on James Harden, just to keep it brief. He stepped to the plate when we needed him to play. He was very durable throughout this season. He was very candid outside of this series where he left the building 3 games in a row and didn't speak to the media, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But and then finally we have Kawhi. I'm of the belief that Kawhi's going to run out his course with the Clippers. He's a free agent in 2026-27. So we have him next year and I think the following year. But I think that, I don't think you're going to garner a ton of interest in the trade market with Kawhi. So whether we like it or not, I think that the plan is to keep Kawhi until his contract runs out. It sucks because he was healthy this season, which is obviously not a guarantee. But it looks like we're going to run back Kawhi and James Harden, or Kawhi and another star. And in one of the following summers is when we're going to hit rebuild, when we'll have a ton of cap space, which I'm looking forward to. But up to this point, I think it is what it is. The Clippers don't own their draft rights this offseason. And if the Dallas Mavericks situation, the Dallas Mavericks got the first pick in the draft, if that showed anything, tanking is not going to guarantee you shit in this league. So that's pretty much it for the individual players. Clipper Nation, let us know what you think in the comments below, what you think the Clippers player rating should be, and what you thought of everybody's individual performances throughout the season and through the series. Guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to jump into kind of like what's going on around the league, like the draft that's impending right now. And then as of a couple of days ago, the draft order, which I have some opinions on, and that kind of ties into the Clippers situation in terms of a rebuild. So we'll be back with all of that and more coming up.
What's up, guys? We are back, and we're going to get straight into kind of the discussion of the NBA draft that happened 2 days ago, I believe.
The lottery, yeah.
And that the draft lottery, and we're kind of going to go over how that affects kind of the Clippers rebuild, and if tanking is really the answer going forward. So if you haven't heard yet, the Dallas Mavericks have been awarded the number one pick in the 2025 NBA draft somehow, and then
They have like
after
a
them, I'll just
1%
name.
chance.
Yeah, they had like a 1% chance. I'll just name off the top five picks. The Dallas Mavericks got the first pick. Second pick was the Spurs, then the 76ers, the Hornets, and then the Jazz. And, people have been speculating on, if the NBA is rigged, because everyone knows the whole story with the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers, going back to that trade with Nico Harrison, the trade where they traded Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis
For nothing,
for
essentially.
for essentially nothing, which was marked as or noted as one of the worst trades of all time, mainly because the Mavericks traded away a much younger superstar who had just led the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals for an older, injury-prone Anthony Davis, who kind of has shown that he isn't willing to put in that effort, which is why the Lakers were so eager to get rid of him. So, I don't know if you heard this or heard this podcast, but, they were interviewing Dwayne Wade, and they asked him if he believed that the NBA was rigged. Dwayne Wade had this to say, and I paraphrase. He said, the NBA is a business at the end of the day. A lot of people forget that, the NBA is a business, and their whole plan is to make as much money as possible, no matter what. They might sell off something as a lottery. They might sell off something as being random. But at the end of the day, it's fully within their right to rig something to make as much money as possible. We talked about this multiple times throughout the season. Everyone knows that, NBA ratings are down, right? So why not trade one of their biggest stars to their biggest market, the Lakers? And in return, the Dallas Mavericks get the number one pick. It's not a crazy thought that would go on, and Dwayne Wade kind of went into, going back to when the Cleveland Cavaliers got the number one pick, when LeBron James was from Ohio, when Derrick Rose was, from Chicago, and then the Chicago Bulls had no business being the number one pick, and they got the number one pick, and was able to pick up Derrick Rose, and kind of have that hometown kid kind of vibe, and kind of going back to this, the Dallas Mavericks had what you said, less than a 1% chance.
Yeah, it was like around 1, and
chance.
Utah, who is a small market, has never had the number one pick. I don't give a fuck what happens to Utah, but they had a 14% chance of winning that number one pick, and they ended up with 5th.
Yeah, so the thing is at the end of the day, the Dallas Mavericks fans were, showing that they were angry and frustrated about the trade. And it seems like the NBA decided, well, we are projected to lose $2 billion or whatever, however much it was in revenue due to Luka not being in Dallas. Let's give them another young superstar, and that will be awarded to them. Honestly, no one knows. Knowing Nico Harrison, he could draft some random kid from fucking Iowa.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the situation.
Yeah, I'm not one to really believe in a lot of these conspiracies. Like, Rola and I are in a fantasy league, and there's always a lot of the homies in the league are always talking about, especially one in particular, are always talking about like this is rigged or like the NBA is soft or like this and this. Like there's a couple skeptics, and I'm usually like the one to like discount that kind of stuff, but this one is just so odd. Like the Luka trade was so odd to begin with, and there's just like a lot of red flags, right? Like let me read you guys the draft order. So it's the Mavericks at 1, the Spurs, who I'm gonna just check this right now. Spurs won 34 games this last season. They have one of the most anticipated rookies in recent history in Victor Wembanyama already. They just made a trade for De'Aaron Fox. They have Stephon Castle. They have like a solid core, and they somehow got the second pick in the draft. Philly at 3, the Charlotte Hornets at 4. The Charlotte Hornets won 19 games this season. Following that is the Utah Jazz, the abysmal Utah Jazz that were purposely losing games all season long, had a whopping win record of 17 wins. They somehow get the 5th pick. The Washington Wizards didn't even make the top 5. The Washington Wizards won 18 games. And like, I'm not out here complaining that the NBA is trying to discount or move away from tanking. I think it's great. But like the way that they're going about this draft lottery process, it hasn't been the right answer. And I don't think there is a right answer necessarily. I mean, I can't think of one. That's why I'm not a commissioner of of the NBA. But like, how does that happen?
But this does, kind of discourage teams from tanking because,
well, yes,
you could tank and give up an entire season. That's an entire season of paying salaries, of having no one come to your games, of people assuming you're trash and assuming things of you, and you get the 5th pick, and you sacrifice all that just for the 5th pick, and it's just not worth it, No. And maybe next year they're still gonna do it. Maybe in 2 years they're still gonna tank. But in like 5-10 years of this, happening, are teams really going to tank? Or are they gonna, even if they're one of the worst teams of the league, are they still gonna try and give their fans a decent product?
And that's just it. Like, and that's what I was gonna bring up is like this relates to the Clippers very much so, because the Clippers are, one of those teams that doesn't have the rights to their own draft pick, right? They're not as bad as the Suns, but the Clippers and the Suns and teams like that are very much, the Bucks are very much in that camp where you can't hit a full rebuild. A lot of Clipper fans, from what I've seen, I think we could. You could, but what are you going to get out of it? Like, let's say last year, the Clippers decided to hit rebuild last year, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, we're going to trade Kawhi. We're going to find a way to trade Kawhi and James Harden for the Utah Jazz pick, because there's no way that the Utah Jazz pick is going to be outside of the top 3, top 2 with how bad the Utah Jazz were. And look at where the Jazz are picking now. No, the Jazz are 5th.
Different. But that's different. You can't, I guess what I'm saying is you can't, predict the future, and you can't say like, oh, they're the 5th pick because this, that, and the 3rd. But if we had given away Kawhi and James Harden, that would shift the standings a little bit more. Maybe the Jazz wouldn't have lost as many games. Maybe the Hornets wouldn't have lost as many games. Maybe the Mavs wouldn't. Maybe that trade wouldn't have happened. So it's like, I think it's a little bit different than kind of just assuming that if we had traded Kawhi and James Harden, then we end up with the 5th pick. I think that there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's a lottery for a reason. And if the NBA are rigging and behind this type of thing, I think the Clippers market is big enough. And with Steve Ballmer, with the amount of money he is, and with how great of an owner he is, I think that they would give us a pretty high pick, if I'm being completely honest. I think the league is better if the Clippers are better.
I mean, yeah, that's certainly true. But the point being, I don't want to sit here and watch, like, I had parlays on the Utah Jazz, some of the Utah Jazz players, like, throughout the season, and I could barely stomach watching that team play. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want my team to be doing that. Like, I would rather see, regardless of what happens in the playoffs, which at this point my expectations are not very high, regardless of what happens in the playoffs, I would rather see a fun, competitive regular season than to watch a team that's actively trying to lose to boost their chances of a higher draft pick.
But you can see that. I mean, the Mavericks didn't like lay down this season. Obviously, Nico Harrison made one of the worst trades of all time.
Yeah,
But
I'll tell you what, I
they
would do anything not to be a Mavs fan
but
up to this point. Like,
right. But they were one game away from being in the playoffs. I mean, you can give away, like some of your, I don't want to say give away, but you can make those trades and kind of do what OKC did and still have a competitive team and still have, something to kind of to give out to the fans. I just think that the best teams in the league right now are teams that kind of built their team through the draft. You see the Timberwolves, you see Jokic, you see the Nuggets, you see OKC, you see the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell made the team significantly better, but most of the team outside of him is kind of like a young team that kind of grew into what they are now. I just think that the later we wait to kind of hop on that wagon of building your team from the ground up and having younger players and young superstars, I think the longer we're going to be waiting for a championship.
That's fair. And like I said up top, I think that there are a lot of different ways that you can dissect this Clipper era, specifically this season. And I don't think there's a wrong way. But it's just, I don't know. Well, that's where we differ, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. This I mean, it's been in the back of my mind for a while, but this particular draft order and this draft lottery makes me even less inclined to want to force a rebuild. I think that obviously it's very clear that the Clippers have a deadline where they want to start their rebuilding process or find a new face of the franchise, and that's the summer of 2025, 2026, or 2026, 2027, when they have a ton of cap space that they can throw at any star. I mean, there's I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if the Thunder don't win a championship in the next couple of years, they'll have enough money to throw back at Shea, and it'd be a really hard thing for him to say no to. That's the kind of money that the Clippers are going to have with a new stadium, with an owner that cares, and one of the best markets in the game, in the league. They will have their time to do that. I just don't think that next year is I don't think it's going to happen, and B, I don't think it should. Based on where the Clippers, the draft rights that the Clippers own, and where they are financially, I think that it's not something that we can force. It's something that needs to happen organically, and we have a timetable for that. And I think that we just need to let that time come.
But I think that time, dude. I think personally that timetable is too long, dude. I mean, when you look at the 2-1-3 era, you look at I talked about this in a previous podcast episode. But when you compare the Lakers and the Clippers, we kind of started and had that rise at the same time. Obviously, Kawhi was choosing between going to the Lakers and the Clippers, right? The Lakers had LeBron and Anthony Davis in that same season go to the bubble. They end up getting their championship, right? They are already on to the next era. We are still waiting 2 more years to get to the next era, knowing that next season we're not going to win, knowing the season after we're not going to win, knowing that when we get a new player, let's say we get Shea, we're going to have to build around him. So that's 3-4 years out before we're even considering getting a championship. Why are we waiting 4 years? And then we're going to be 4 years behind the Lakers, who have already started their rebuild for the next era.
Lakers got eliminated before we did. So
no, but I'm just saying they have a superstar that's young. He's 26 years old. We don't have shit, dude. We have Kawhi Leonard, who, I mean, we saw him healthy, can't get us past the first round. We have James Harden, who fucking collapses with 7 points. Somehow that's fucking possible with a guy who's a former MVP All-Star and was a former scoring title champion. So I mean, I just think that it's so, personally, I just think it's so dumb, dude. Why are we waiting? It just feels like the Clippers are afraid to take that next step and afraid to be a trailblazer, and rather we're just kind of following in the smoke and footsteps, kind of just saying, oh, you know what? Maybe they'll come to us. Maybe we'll get Giannis. Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll have enough money to do this. And then what if we get to that point in time and no one comes to the Clippers? Then we're out another 2-3 years, and it's just not. I just don't think it's the way to go about being a championship team. I think you got to be proactive. I think you got to work through the draft. I think you got to get a superstar, a young star, and groom him into a superstar the way every other team who is successful since. I mean, you look at the Celtics last year. Their number one player, shout out to Jason Tatum, who just tore his Achilles. But Jason Tatum
really sad.
And Jaylen Brown were both drafted by the Celtics, and they eventually got to the point where they could win a championship. That's the way. I mean, you look at OKC, you look at the Nuggets, you look at all the best teams in the league. They all got their superstars through the draft, and we're trying to kind of like hope that we get Giannis, hope that we get another player to come by, and then they have 2 or 3 years to build a team around him so they can win a championship. And then we face someone like the OKC, or we face someone like the Nuggets, and we lose to them. And I just feel like we're doing the same thing every single year, and it's just not. It's obviously not the answer.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's my final rant on that.
No, that's fine. And Clipper Nation, I want you to let us know what you think, because there's obviously many sides to this die. I think that I think that if there is a trade that the Clippers cannot refuse, i.e. the Luka trade, if you're Rob Pelinka, that it would be a trade that you can't refuse. If there is a trade that comes the Clippers' way this offseason like that, or anything remotely close to that, I guarantee you Lawrence Frank, who is a professional, I have a lot of opinions on Lawrence Frank, but I guarantee you if a trade like that comes his way, he will take it. So I just don't think that you can shit can your team for nothing. I think it has to be the right trade, the right moves to be made. You're not going to trade Kawhi to the Lakers. You're not going to trade him to a rival. Like there are limits that you can take, but it'll be very interesting to see what is proposed to the Clippers front office this offseason, what they decide to take. I think that starts with Norman Powell. I think that's a very clear avenue to try and, if you're going to make a move and try and shake it up, to do it without completely hamstringing your entire team's competitiveness. So that the Norman Powell saga this offseason is going to be very interesting. James Harden's future with the Clippers is going to be very interesting, but I just think that I'm setting my bar and expectations very low in terms of what I think the Clippers will do this offseason in terms of shaking it up. But you got everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, please let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your opinions on this. Also, Rola mentioned it already. I just wanted to give a shout out to Jason Tatum, who, as Rola said, tore his Achilles. The Boston Celtics are down 3-1. They are probably going to lose to the New York Knicks. There's been a lot of unfortunate injuries. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been kind of dealing with injuries this entire series against the Pacers, were eliminated yesterday. So basically, as it stands, the playoff landscape, we're going to see one of Ant, or one of Halliburton, or one of Brunson, or one of who the fuck am I leaving out? Shea, probably. I mean, that series is still definitely in the balance, but the Thunder took a very big advantage, winning one yesterday, going up 3-2. So we're likely going to see one of those four guys win a championship this season. So very interesting. It's been a fun playoffs outside of what's happened to the Clippers. So not really any complaints there, but yeah. We're all kind of waiting with bated breath going into this offseason. So we're going to have some episodes going into this Clipper offseason, kind of talking about with the draft coming up. I want to talk about some draft picks that I really would like to see the Clippers take if they choose to keep their current picks, which are 30th, the end of the first round, and 51st, the end of the second round. This draft class is very stacked. There's a lot of prospects that I really like, so we'll probably talk about that in the coming future. And then the news as it trickles in pertaining to the Clippers, we will be here to break all of that down, guys. So thank you so much for bearing with us on this longer than usual episode, but we did have a lot to cover. We'll also have some more. We were thinking about doing, so we haven't done our giveaway for game 3, or the third win of game 6. Of the series, but we figured just with the way that the series ended, we'll probably save the rest of these merch giveaways for some other things throughout the off season. So stay tuned for that. We will definitely be giving away more merch, so don't you worry your pretty little heads Clip Service fans. We will have free merch for you eventually. But again, thank you so much for listening. As Rola said up top, you can watch us on YouTube, find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Clip Service Pod. Stream us on Deezer, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And just give us a 5-star review, comment, like, subscribe, all the above. We really appreciate the support, guys. And Clip Service will keep on putting out episodes despite the early exit from the playoffs for the Clippers, guys. So we really appreciate it. And as Adam Silver said when he was sitting at the draft room and talking about how he's going to give the Clippers the number 1 pick in the draft in a couple of years, let's go Clips.
Let's go Clips.
Salute.